I think we're living in really unprecedented times right now. We, as an organization, have seen significant cuts just coming in the last month or two from the federal government, and so we're seeing this historic, disinvestment in the communities that we're serving and in organizations like ours. And so, were there times when I felt like this was achievable over the course of my life? Absolutely. But we're living in some really trying times right now, and I think it really speaks to why we need to continue to rise to the challenge to make sure that the hundreds of thousands of people that are relying on us are getting the basic foods that they need.
Hi, and welcome to Currently by Kite. I'm Becca Smith, and I'm here with my colleague Lewis Miller. And today we're going to be interviewing George Matysik of the Share Food Program, which is the largest food bank in the Philadelphia region. At Kite, we've been proud to work with Share Food Program for the past 5 years. And as part of that, we often find ourselves volunteering in the Share Food warehouse. Lewis, wondering what your favorite experience is of volunteering at Share Food Program, and how are you at packing boxes?
Well, I think they're related in the sense that I think my most memorable part of packing boxes is how I feel the next day after carrying around a bunch of 32-pound boxes all day. I am not as in shape as I would like to be, but I think also it's a very impactful experience. I think obviously we're very fortunate to not have to worry about where our next meal is coming from, but that makes that need very real and very tangible. And so you see just the vastness of the facilities and which represents the need that's in the Philadelphia area. So that makes it very real for us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One of my favorite things about working at Kite is working with nonprofit organizations like Share Food Program. That's why we're so excited to talk to George today. He's been the executive director of the Share Food Program for 6 years. Before that, the executive director of the Philadelphia Parks Alliance. And before that, the Director of Government Affairs for Philabundance. He's a Philly native and a Penn graduate. Welcome, George. Thank you for joining us.
Me. Appreciate it.
So I'm really interested as we get started to hearing a little bit about your journey into this role at Share Food Program and your passion for public service.
Yeah, so Share has been an organization that's been in my life for 25 years now. So I actually went to high school across the street at Mercy Tech. Used to volunteer there as a kid. And then as I was, when I was graduating college, I ended up, as you mentioned, working for Philabundance, so in a similar space. And got very close to the then executive director of Share, Stevana Wynn, who had been there for 31 years. And so as my career was progressing and Stevana announced that she was retiring, after 31 years there, my initial instinct was, God bless the sucker that tries to fill her shoes. But then after a while, I really thought of how, the role that Share plays in our sort of civic society here in the Philadelphia region and how important of an organization it is. And so when Stevana announced that she was retiring, I reached out to them and wanted to make sure that they ended up in a good spot, and so started talking with them and ultimately ended up coming on board 6 years ago, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Share's impact in the Philadelphia region. How many people do you serve? How many regions around the city are you impacting?
It's hundreds of thousands of people, and it's growing every day that we're serving a Share Food Program. So really the organization, we serve already several hundred thousand through our network of food pantries. So we've got about 300-400 food pantries that we serve. So these are community organizations, houses of worship, other organizations that are helping distribute food out into the nearby communities. And then in addition to that, we serve all 70 school districts in our region, about 300,000 kids per day. get some portion of their food from us at Share Food Program. So we work with, it's about 800 total schools work with us to get the food to be able to provide through the National School Lunch Program.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And George, as you're talking through those numbers, I'm so grateful, one, that Share Food exists and that it's filling that role in our neighborhoods, but also it's a bit of an indictment on the fact that we need to have this amount of help and the fact that there's that much need in the Philadelphia region.
Yeah.
And you're in this kind of interesting situation where the ideal scenario for Share Food is that you don't need to exist anymore.
That's right. Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about, one, do you think that that is an achievable goal in our lifetime? And what does that look like? What would it take to get there?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as like food should be considered somewhat like an essential utility, right? You turn on the faucet, water should come out. You turn on the lights should go on, right? And I think in the similar way, we should think about food. That if anybody needs nutritious food, specifically nutritious food, they should be able to get what they need. And so, for us, for our organization, a lot of the way we look at this is, the food system between the haves and the have-nots should be as close to identical as possible. So if somebody can go online, if somebody of means can go online and order food and expect it on their doorstep in 2 hours, somebody who doesn't have the means should be able to do the same thing. So as it comes to quality, as it comes to access, we should really have one food system that's serving everybody.
Do you think it is achievable for us to obtain that in our lifetimes?
In our lifetime, maybe. Next 4 years, I don't know. I think we're living in really unprecedented times right now. We, as an organization, have seen significant cuts just coming in the last month or two from the federal government, and so we're seeing this historic, disinvestment in the communities that we're serving and in organizations like ours. And so, were there times when I felt like this was achievable over the course of my life? Absolutely. But we're living in some really trying times right now, and I think it really speaks to why we need to continue to rise to the challenge to make sure that the hundreds of thousands of people that are relying on us are getting the basic foods that they need.
Mm-hmm. With the divestment of federal funding and other potential funding sources, it seems more important than ever that you're sharing Share's story with other stakeholders, other potential funders. What are some of the ways that you go about doing that and impressing upon people who could be supporters and engaged, impressing on them the importance of Share Food Program and what it does and how to get them excited about participating?
Well, first of all, we have a great website. I don't know if you know that. But we also, we are a big part of our goal is to make sure that people really have an understanding for the scale of the work that we do. So I can cite numbers. It's hard to really envision 300,000 people, right? That's like filling Lincoln Financial Field 5 times, right? So we're talking about huge numbers here. I think a lot of times it's hard for folks to wrap their heads around just how much work they're doing. The best thing is like what you guys did, to come in and volunteer and actually get to see the operations and see the trucks on the road. But then most important for me is always going out to sites where we're having distributions at and getting to see the people impacting, hearing the stories from the folks that we're serving and what they're going through. And I always think of as I go out to our pantries or even at our warehouse, the different stories that come up. I remember being there one Friday afternoon last summer, and a father pulled up in a minivan, and he was a recent Ukrainian refugee and had just come to the United States. And he opened up the minivan door, and his five girls came out of the car, and they were all coming to get food from us. And they drove down from Northeast Philly. We're 10, 12 miles from where he was at. Drove down to get food on a Friday afternoon because he couldn't find anywhere else that was open to get food assistance. And it's stories like that we see replicated every single day throughout the entire region of folks that are relying on structure that we're helping put out there. But to your earlier point, it shouldn't have to exist at all, right? That in the richest country in the history of the world, providing relief in the way that we do shouldn't have to be the way that we do it. It should be similar to a utility or just a basic human right that everybody recognizes and everybody realizes we need to provide at minimum, nutritious food and a roof over everybody's head. I mean, those are just basic human rights.
You talked a little bit about how Share Food has evolved over the years.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've enjoyed seeing is how you've created partnerships with a lot of organizations.
Sure. Yeah.
You talked about the food pantries. I think DoorDash, your partnership with DoorDash has been transformational. Talk a little bit about that and how those may evolve in the coming months.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say it's more important than ever that we develop those partnerships, right? It's we are at a time where we need to bring people together, and really food to me is such a unifying experience. It certainly is with my family, right? Like a big meal is the way that it's my family's love language, right? Mm-hmm. So I think for us, we look at this very much as like food is the gateway to community, to other social services, right? And so we're always looking for those organizations who can help us, mm-hmm. Do that work and connect directly with community. And then there's sort of the other sort of service-related partnerships, like what you're talking about with DoorDash, where mm-hmm. When we started at the beginning of the pandemic, we were serving several thousand seniors through our senior box program that we pack those boxes at our volunteer center. And the challenge in April of 2020 was that many of the organizations that we were serving those boxes through, a lot of senior centers and senior high-rises, had closed their doors to the public. Mm-hmm. And we had thousands of seniors who could no longer get their box of food. So what we did, we called them all at home and we said, hey, if we arranged for a volunteer to make this delivery for you, would you want that? Overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. In the first month alone, I think we did 800 deliveries. The month after that was 1,200. It grew so much so fast that we realized this is beyond what our volunteer capacity is. And so we ended up reaching out to DoorDash and creating a partnership with them. We are now at Share, our warehouse is, according to DoorDash, the single largest DoorDash location in the country, just in terms of the amount of deliveries that we're doing out of there. Amazing. So it's been a huge growth and a huge opportunity for us to be able to, as I mentioned earlier, deliver that higher level quality of service for folks.
Mm-hmm. So the partnership with DoorDash touches on my next question for you, which is two parts. The first is, during COVID and since then, how have you seen the need for Share Food programs, services grow across the city? And then part two of that is, then how have you scaled your operations to meet that? Yeah,
it's so interesting. So we saw in the peak pandemic, right? So March through about September, October of 2020, unprecedented demand where I think for a lot of folks may have experienced food insecurity for the first time, and not just because of poverty, which is typically, the greatest contributor to food insecurity, mm-hmm. but also just supply chain issues. Anybody was going to the grocery store and not finding the groceries they need. And so for a lot of folks, I think it hit home in a different way in the pandemic, and we were providing relief in a very different way than we historically had, where we were doing distributions and people from all over were showing up because they couldn't get food at the grocery store. And so we saw, peak demand there in that over the summer of 2020. And slowly, over the course of that fall and into 2021, we started to see government take action. And you saw extended unemployment benefits, mm-hmm. you saw additional tax credits, you saw government really take responsibility and recognize that there is a health and economic crisis that is happening right now. Mm-hmm. And bipartisan support came in and really, helped people out. And then in 2021, I think in a lot of ways, going late into 2021, that bipartisan support started to shift and break apart in many ways. Mm. And people kind of said, and people in DC kind of said, well, the health crisis is over, the economic crisis must be over as well. And so we actually saw in late 20 and into 2021, the biggest decrease in poverty that we have seen in the recent history of this country, mm-hmm. because there were all of these extended benefits. Right. When those started to get ripped out from families in late into 2021, we started to see the numbers slowly start to tick up again in going into 2022. Mm-hmm. And since then, since January of 2022, we've seen about 120% increase of folks coming to us in need of food assistance. And so that was, again, it was where for briefly, and in a bipartisan way, government was working for about a year and a half, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing. We were seeing, really positive results happening, and then, we kind of took a huge leap backwards and have been in that situation since.
Mm-hmm. In the current landscape and how you see things going, say, the next 4 years, how do you expect that need to change over this time?
I mean, truthfully, we don't know, right? So I think that's been one of the biggest challenges for us, is not only the divestment that's happening, but also just how uncertain everything is right now. I mean, we got wind a couple of weeks ago, over a weekend, that there was going to be a nationally $1 billion cut into USDA foods that was going to food pantries like the ones that we serve, as well as schools like we also serve. All told, for Pennsylvanians, that ended up being about $40 million worth of cuts. So we at Share are seeing about an $8 million cut happening for us in terms of food and funding right now. Mm-hmm. That's a huge part of our where we get our food, our budget, you name it. And so we're having to quickly pivot and react to all of these, in many ways, from our own government, self-inflicted wounds that we're having to make up for in many ways, with less and less resources coming in every day. So I don't know how that can be sustained for 4 years, and I think there's a lot of I think within the social service network and really just within many of the working families that we serve, there are a lot of questions of where do we go from here and what do we do right now. And I think there's a lot of good and important conversations that are happening right now around how we can continue to organize to make sure that not only do these cuts not take hold, but that we're also able to resource our communities properly. But yeah, this has definitely been, certainly in the first few months here of 2025, this has been a huge step back for society right now.
Mm-hmm.
And for our audience, people who may be watching this from their homes or from their offices, how could they potentially help? I mean, we talked about some of your partnerships, but obviously there's a lot of volunteer opportunities. Yeah. How could people help fill this need? There's
so many ways to get involved with us at Share Food Program. So, and all of them are on our website, our beautifully designed website. So if you go on there, you can find out opportunities for volunteering, how to donate food, how to donate money. These are all resources that we need as an organization. As we look into the future of how many folks that we're going to be needing to serve as we go forward here, we're going to need more help than ever before. And all three of those, money, food, and people are what we need to get the job done.
Mm-hmm. And again, for our audience of marketers, business owners, whether they're for-profits or nonprofits, what could they learn from Share Food and kind of your evolution over the years?
I think as an organization, we've had to adapt to changing times again and again and again. This goes back even to my predecessor, and I got to watch how she evolved the organization during the 2008 financial crisis. Obviously, we had to make some changes, some significant changes during the pandemic, and we're continuing to figure that out today. I truly believe there's a quote out there like no crisis go to waste, and I think as an organization we need to continue to evolve and adapt to the changing times that we're living in, and I hope that we continue to do it well.
So George, you talked about this $8 million funding gap. How do you respond to that? What are your plans?
I have to say, being at the head of Share during the pandemic, it was amazing the way community stepped up to help support us. And I remember some of those early months, April, May of 2020, and not knowing, what we were going to be dealing with from week to week. It feels very similar to that of what we're going through right now as an organization. And what I will say is, whether it was our volunteers, whether it was our donors, people stepped up in amazing ways in the pandemic, and we're definitely starting to see that begin to happen again during this crisis that we're living through right now, and having that community, really the community that we support, come back to help support us in many ways.
So George, part of leading a mission-driven organization is certainly your role as a leader. As you're telling the story of Share, tell us a little bit about the interplay between your role as a public-facing leader of the organization and then telling the story of the organization itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's particularly relevant now, you know, and I think for many organizations, like this is a time when leadership matters the most. We are in many ways, at least, you know, for our organization and the people that we are serving, we are in a crisis right now. And I mentioned earlier, you know, we went through a health and an economic crisis back in 2020. We're now living through a political and economic crisis. And so I think it's times like these when things are at their hardest that leadership matters the most. And I think I am blessed that I get to work with amazing, great leaders within our organization as well, who help, you know, inspire me and challenge me, and ultimately, as a mission-driven organization, I think the most important component for us is always keeping the mission first and keeping, you know, the folks that we serve centered in all of the decisions that we're making. And I think that's if we keep that as our main, you know, guidepost here, you know, there might be decisions that are challenging or hard for us, but and we might not get them 100% right, but I believe if we keep the folks that we serve, you know, front and center, that ultimately, you know, we'll at least be doing our best to do right by them.
Mm-hmm.
So George, as the leader, do you feel like it's more important to have those good communication skills that you were talking about, or be a better administrator within the organization?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think both are key. I think communication, though, especially in trying times like we're living in now, is absolutely essential. And I think the important piece of it is that communication is not just outward, right? It's in and out. It is not only you know, as the leader of an organization, you know, saying, you know, the important things that we need to say, but also hearing from the community that we're serving, and that's the really key part of communicating here, is making sure that we are hearing and understanding the folks that we serve every day and responding to what they're telling us.
So George, as a Philly native, we'd love to hear some of your Philly favorites.
Okay.
So, favorite place to get a cheesesteak?
Without question, there's a couple ways to answer this, but let me just say flat out, best cheesesteak in the city, I believe, is Steve's Prince of Steaks, the original Steve's Prince of Steaks at St. Vincent and Bustleton Avenue.
What do you love about Steve's Prince of Steaks?
Okay, great question. Good follow-up. They slice it, they don't chop it, they slice it, quality meat every time. It's not the pretentious, you know, you've got to wait in line for an hour or anything like that. It's a little bit of a off the beaten path, a little bit of a secret. Not everybody knows about it. Quality every time. They've never failed me.
So George, what is your favorite non-cheesesteak restaurant in Philly?
So based on vibes alone, I would say Tierra Colombiana. It's my go-to spot at 5th and Wyoming in North Philly.
Okay.
That is like any family celebrations that we're doing, or if I just need to, like, you know, have lunch with somebody, that's where I'm going. You know, that's my go-to restaurant in the city.
All right.
What's one thing that you think a non-Philly person should know about this city?
Okay, all right. I actually know exactly how I want to answer this. Okay, all right. So part of what I would say is that Philadelphia is so much more than the cheesesteaks and the football team and stuff like that. I think oftentimes kind of get typecast into like one or two things that people know about Philadelphia, but it's actually a city with incredibly rich history, incredibly rich culture. Every neighborhood has its own distinct personality, and you literally spend days, if not weeks, exploring the city and all that it has to offer.
George, thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. It's been a pleasure connecting and hearing more about you and about your food program.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.